The catch up, boy. On phone them grand. No, I got 4 watches, 4 chains.
The legacy of Chief Keef's Glow Gang framed Tadaw's return. This crew, originally called Glory Boys Entertainment, had built drill music from the ground up, intertwining family, loyalty, and territory into a cultural phenomenon. Tata was not acting for personal notoriety alone. He was carrying the banner of Keef's legacy, demonstrating the same energy and aggression that defined the group during its peak. Returning to neighborhoods where members had been ambushed, shot, or killed added weight to every movement he made. Fans recognized the continuity of energy, while skeptics saw a calculated, high-risk performance meant to command attention. Reactions were split across the drill community. Fans praised the return, noting the authenticity and resemblance to Chief Keef's energy during his early rise. Skeptics called it reckless, comparing the display of wealth and threats to theater rather than strategic action. Critics raised concerns about the real dangers on Chicago streets, referencing past tragedies and drawing parallels to the story of blood money. Despite opinions, every comment reflected awareness of the inherent risk. Glow Gang members returning to these blocks had a high likelihood of conflict. The history of the city, combined with Tadaw's public threats, made this return more than symbolic. It was a high-stakes maneuver. The story of blood money remained central to understanding the risks. As Keef's cousin and a foundational member of Glow Gang, he had been positioned for success with a record deal, yet his life ended violently upon returning to Chicago. Tadaw's videos echoed that narrative visually and verbally. Jewelry, watches, threats, and the declaration of presence were all markers intended to signal both power and readiness. Observers drew direct comparisons, noting the repetition of history in a modern context. Chief Keef's own trajectory underscored the stakes of returning to the city. After the death of Blood Money and other associates, he relocated to Los Angeles, understanding that his continued presence in Chicago would be a risk to his life. By carefully orchestrating a network of affiliates and relocating operations to the West Coast, Keef had created a strategy for survival and success. Tadaw's return in 2026 demonstrated the evolution of that strategy. Presence in Chicago was necessary for visibility and influence, but it carried the shadows of past violence. Online and offline, the implications were clear. Every gesture Tadaw made was tied to a deeper understanding of Chicago streets, Glow Gang's history, and the unresolved tensions with rival sets. The combination of historical awareness, visual symbolism, and verbal threat created a multi-layered statement that resonated across the drill music community. Fans, rivals, and analysts alike recognized that this was not casual bravado. It was a carefully calculated maneuver informed by years of experience, observation, and the harsh realities of survival in Chicago's South Side.
You let the family cook? Or you just
family in
chef it?
Chicago, man.
My
family is from Chirac. I'm in Los Angeles.
Chief Keef's own words reinforced the context for understanding Tadaw's return. In multiple interviews, he credited his move to Los Angeles with saving his life, stating that leaving Chicago allowed him to grow, develop emotionally, and avoid the deadly cycle of street violence that had claimed so many of his peers. His relocation wasn't merely a change of geography, it was a survival strategy. In LA, Keef developed as an artist, father, and entrepreneur, building a net worth estimated at $10 million through music and Glow Gang ventures. Every year he spent away reinforced the wisdom of that decision, as Chicago continued to claim the lives of those who remained behind. The juxtaposition of Tadaw's return and Keef's departure highlighted the paradox of success within the drill world. Those who stayed often fell victim to violence, while those who left survived and prospered. Tadaw's presence in Chicago represented a calculated risk, balancing the need to maintain influence with the inherent dangers of returning to a city with unresolved conflicts and historical grudges. Every watch, chain, and verbal threat communicated not just dominance, but awareness of these dangers. This strategy was further informed by the deaths of key Glow Gang figures. O.D. Perry, Keef's stepbrother, Blood Money, and other affiliates had been lost to violence, each leaving a mark on the remaining members' understanding of risk. Tadaw's public displays in February 2026 were therefore both symbolic and tactical, a demonstration of resilience, influence, and readiness in the face of history's lessons. Drill fans recognized the continuity between past and present, understanding that these gestures were deliberate, grounded in survival, and meant to convey a clear message to allies and rivals alike. Keef's commentary in interviews added nuance. Leaving Chicago allowed him to develop emotional range, focus on his family, and engage in artistic growth without the constant threat of street violence. His distance from the city preserved his life, and indirectly, the legacy of Glow Gang. Tadaw's actions, by contrast, were designed to navigate the city's dangers while maintaining that legacy, signaling to rivals and supporters that the Glow Gang's influence remained intact and operational. By analyzing both historical and contemporary actions, it became clear that Tada's return was a calculated statement in multiple dimensions: survival, loyalty, visibility, and legacy. His presence reinforced the enduring impact of Chief Keef's decisions while testing the limits of Chicago's tolerance for the revival of Glow Gang dominance. Every video, every gesture, and every word was carefully constructed to convey intent, readiness, and historical continuity.
Catch up, boy. On phone them grade. No, I got 4 watches, 4 chains.
The environment Tado returned to was unforgiving. Those who remained in Chicago after Keef's departure faced constant threats, violence, and systemic barriers that reinforced the city's reputation as lethal for drill artists. Every loss among Keef's circle validated his decision to leave. Even from 2,000 miles away in Los Angeles, he observed as the city claimed lives and dismantled crews, highlighting the survival paradox: those who escaped lived, those who stayed perished. Tata, by re-entering the city, was consciously stepping into a volatile and historically unforgiving environment. Authorities compounded the challenges. Over the years, Chicago officials had placed indirect restrictions on Keef and his affiliates, limiting performances, scrutinizing social activity, and creating a constant threat of legal consequences. For example, Keef's hologram benefit concert attempt in 2015 was shut down due to public safety concerns. Even without physical presence, the city imposed constraints, demonstrating the ongoing influence of policy and law enforcement on drill artists' actions. Tada's reemergence was therefore a calculated decision, navigating both historical violence and contemporary scrutiny. The combination of legal scrutiny, historical violence, and ongoing rivalries made Tada's return a multidimensional maneuver. It was not merely about public display, it was a navigation of Chicago's complex social, legal, and gang dynamics. Observers recognized that every watch, chain, and threat was part of a broader strategy, designed to assert influence without falling victim to the city's historical patterns of violence. Furthermore, Tada's return was contextualized by the prior groundwork laid by Chief Keef. Even while away, Keef maintained influence over his affiliates, guiding decisions and providing strategic oversight. Tada's public videos acted as extensions of that oversight, signaling continuity, loyalty, and operational awareness. Fans understood the significance. This was the Glow Gang reasserting its power in a city that had long challenged their dominance. Finally, the visual and verbal narrative created by Tada served multiple purposes simultaneously, asserting dominance, honoring the legacy of fallen affiliates, warning rivals, and signaling to supporters that Glow Gang remained operational. Every action reinforced a clear pattern. Survival required awareness, readiness, and respect for historical precedent. In a city where the past is never truly forgotten, Tada's actions were carefully aligned to navigate danger while asserting presence, making his return both audacious and strategically sound.
Too though.
Yeah, I think it's with Chief Keef, I think it's just like niggas was trying to make him do something that he.
Every death within Chief Keef's network underscored the fragility of life in Chicago's drill scene. The cumulative effect of these losses shaped both personal and professional strategies, emphasizing the necessity of distance, awareness, and tactical maneuvering. Keef himself survived because he left, he ran, and never stopped running, building a life and career insulated from the cycles of immediate street violence. This context is critical to understanding the viral 2026 clip of Tada. The watches, chains, and threats were not merely performative, but rooted in an environment saturated with historical trauma, real danger, and lessons learned over more than a decade. The geography of Chicago amplified the stakes. Every block held a memory, a warning, or a claim of territory. Returning to these spaces was a calculated risk, one that had claimed previous affiliates and cousins like blood money. Tada's presence on these blocks was a statement of intent, courage, and strategic awareness. The videos he released were analyzed with precision by drill fans, street observers, and rivals alike. Each visual cue, from luxury watches to specific jewelry pieces, was read as both a status symbol and a tactical message about preparedness and history-informed aggression. The unresolved nature of Blood Money's murder added layers to the narrative. While public rumor and drill commentary often speculated on who was responsible, official investigations yielded no arrests, leaving a lingering ambiguity. Allegations later pointed to a backdoor betrayal, a calculated betrayal by individuals within extended circles, amplifying the cautionary tale of returning to Chicago with success or wealth. These unresolved questions framed Tada's reemergence as not only a revival of Glow Gang presence, but also a confrontation with historical risk, emphasizing the careful balance between assertion of power and exposure to danger. In February 2026, Tada's strategic reentry echoed these historical lessons. Every frame of his video served multiple purposes, asserting dominance, signaling readiness, honoring fallen affiliates, and reinforcing the Glow Gang brand. Online communities dissected each action, aware of both historical parallels and immediate threat potential. Rival sets recognized the implied consequences, while fans understood the continuity between Keef's earlier departures, Tadaw's calculated return, and the broader narrative of survival and legacy. Ultimately, Tadaw's videos were more than spectacle, they were strategic communication. Each gesture, phrase, and visual element reinforced a message. Glow Gang is back, aware of past losses, operationally ready, and unwilling to tolerate interference. The history of violence, combined with the ongoing potential for conflict, created a tension-filled environment in which every decision carried both symbolic and practical weight.
Y'all love Chicago though. Y'all know that. We finna rock this. We still out here on Folsom Grade. We started
10 years. That is the span of time that separated Chief Keef's last presence in Chicago from this moment. Over a decade had passed since Glow Gang's operations shifted primarily to the West Coast, leaving behind a trail of history, violence, and power vacuums. Streets once dominated by Glow Gang now bore witness to other crews attempting to fill the void. Yet Tadaw's appearance reminded everyone that absence does not erase legacy. Standing on Southside pavement, he communicated to the city and the world that the wait was over. Glow Gang's return was not symbolic, it was operational. The context mattered. Glow Gang's history was built on dominance, music, and loyalty. Chief Keef had famously constructed a network that intertwined family ties, neighborhood allegiances, and street credibility. Every action by members of the group resonated with the past, echoing memories of triumph, survival, and tragedy. Tadaw's presence on these streets symbolized not just a personal return, but the continuation of a generational mission. Observers knew the risks. Previous returns, especially that of blood money, had ended in bloodshed. Every line spoken on camera, every piece of jewelry displayed, and every gesture made public carried an implicit threat. The stakes were magnified because of the violent reputation of Chicago itself. In neighborhoods where disputes over territory, reputation, and power had claimed countless lives, Glow Gang's assertion of presence was inherently provocative. The words Tadaw used, direct, explicit, and tied to rivals, were not metaphorical. They were a warning. Every viewer who understood Chicago's street culture recognized the implications. This wasn't a game. Any rival who misinterpreted the clip risked serious consequences. Social media amplified these stakes. Clips spread rapidly, reaching audiences who had never set foot on Southside streets, but understood the dynamics of drill culture. Conversations erupted around every platform, debating the intentions, strategy, and potential outcomes of Tadaw's actions. Commentators compared his statements to past incidents, referencing the legacy of blood money, the historical rivalries, and the complex web of alliances and betrayals that had shaped the crew's story over the past decade.
Maybe chilling in the rack, man.
Yeah.
I'm chilling and I got a chef in LA. They come do what I want them to do. Whatever I say, they be. Oh, fuck.
Tadaw's words and presence were more than symbolic. They were a reminder of the city's unforgiving nature. Chicago had not forgotten the blood spilled over years, and neither had the Glow Gang. Each time a member left and returned, the risk of violence increased. Historical context amplified the stakes. In 2014, Blood Money, Tadaw's cousin and a key figure in Glow Gang, had returned to Chicago with a legitimate record deal and a $50,000 advance. The celebration of success quickly turned deadly when he was ambushed and shot multiple times in broad daylight, a brutal reminder of the street's memory and their unforgiving retaliation. The parallels were immediate for anyone familiar with the gang's history. Tadaw's flexing of watches, chains, and bold threats mirrored the audacious return of Blood Money, but the question on everyone's mind was whether the story would end the same way. Social media erupted in response to the parallels. Fans dissected every word, noting the differences and similarities between the two cousins' returns. Analysts and drill enthusiasts highlighted the deliberate choices in Tadaw's presentation, the abundance of jewelry, the mention of specific rival gangs, and the public declaration of readiness to engage in conflict. Each element was designed to communicate both strength and vigilance. Observers could see the lineage of danger, opportunity, and bravado passed down through the Glow Gang network. The online reaction was equally fierce, with thousands of comments debating whether Tadaw was intentionally recreating Blood Money's trajectory or strategically avoiding past mistakes. The second video solidified Tadaw's presence. Speaking directly into the camera, he emphasized that Glow Gang was ready to operate in Chicago again after more than a decade away. The threat was clear. Any rival affiliation could expect retaliation or confrontation. Observers noted the deliberate timing and public nature of the video, emphasizing that Glow Gang's return wasn't quiet or understated. It was bold, confident, and calculated. Each movement and each word reinforced a simple, chilling message. The streets had not forgotten Glow Gang's legacy, and neither had the crew. The return was more than a personal statement, it was a tactical announcement. Every rival gang member, every former associate, and every observer now understood that Glow Gang was not only back, but operating under the same principles that had once governed its dominance. The South Side streets, with their deep-rooted histories of rivalry, violence, and loyalty, were once again the stage for this unfolding drama. The online response only amplified the reach of Tadaw's message, spreading it across platforms and networks far beyond Chicago, creating a global awareness of Glow Gang's continued influence.
And then and you see what happens to the ones that didn't leave. Now they still getting caught up. Like,
Pop Smoke
or
left.
dead.
They got his ass all the way over there.
The narrative of betrayal and internal conflict added a further dimension to Tadaw's return. Historical accounts suggested that Blood Money's murder was not solely a result of outside enemies, but involved individuals within the network who were supposed to be neutral or even supportive. Allegations made years later pointed to a backdoor strategy executed by members of the O-Block-affiliated camp, highlighting the vulnerability of affiliates even among seemingly trusted allies. These revelations transformed the understanding of past events, casting a shadow over contemporary interactions and emphasizing the necessity of vigilance, strategic alliance management, and calculated risk assessment. Tadaw's visual displays and verbal threats were thus deeply informed by both personal history and the broader historical narrative of Glow Gang. Every word and gesture was layered with meaning, referencing lessons learned from past violence and betrayal while signaling readiness to both allies and rivals. The combination of jewelry, watches, geographic context, and direct threats functioned as a multi-dimensional communication strategy. Observers interpreted these elements as both performance and operational signaling, bridging historical precedent with immediate tactical intent. The drill community online amplified these messages, dissecting lyrics, videos, and social media posts for hidden meanings. Fans debated whether Tadaw's displays were homage, strategic intimidation, or a mixture of both. Skeptics questioned the wisdom of returning to historically dangerous neighborhoods, while loyal supporters framed the actions as an essential assertion of authority and continuity. The historical narrative, including Blood Money's fate, Keef's relocation, and unresolved tensions, framed all reactions. Chief Keef's guidance, even from afar, informed these decisions. His experiences navigating Chicago's lethal environment, combined with a decade of observing the city's consequences, created a framework for operational strategy. Tadaw's return was therefore not impulsive, it was calculated, informed, and contextually aware, leveraging historical knowledge to manage risk while asserting influence. Every word, gesture, and symbolic display reflected the accumulated lessons of loss, survival, and strategic thinking within the Glow Gang network.
Like, pay for somebody to bail or something.
I seen that shit.
And they were saying he got all his money, but like,
All that
I
money
feel
is
Chief
y'all
Keef
money.
though. He got to never look.
Back in Chicago, the streets were alive with tension and anticipation. That is where Keef's cousin, Tadaw, known offstage as Darren Rose, began making waves. Footage of him circulating online instantly drew attention. He was flexing jewelry, flaunting ice, and issuing threats with an unmistakable confidence, declaring that anyone who dared cross him would face serious consequences. For years, the idea of returning to Chicago had been taboo for members of Chief Keef's circle. Past experiences had left a permanent scar on the family's approach to the city's dangerous streets. The memory of his cousin, Blood Money, who had returned years prior and was killed almost immediately after showing off his wealth, haunted the legacy of the Glow Gang. Every action Tadaw took was measured against that history. The community watched closely because in Chicago, gestures like flaunting chains and watches were more than just a display, they were statements of presence, intent, and dominance. This time, however, Tadaw's return was more deliberate, more calculated. A short video appeared on Instagram in late February 2026, and it didn't take long for it to spread across every drill-focused page on the internet. In the clip, he was standing in a recognizable Southside neighborhood, decked in streetwear, adjusting his hat, and showing off the items on his person with authority. Every detail, the way he moved, the way he spoke, even the way he looked at the camera, was scrutinized by viewers and fans of drill music. There was no ambiguity in the visual message. Tadaw was back and his presence was intentional. It was not casual, it was a declaration. The social media frenzy was immediate. Clips were reposted on Instagram Reels across major pages like My Mixtape, Daily Hip Hop on Demand, Squid Ape TV, and Poetic Flacco News. The conversation spilled onto Facebook, X, and countless other platforms, where thousands of likes, shares, and comments poured in. What made the clip especially significant was its connection to Chief Keef. Tada had been based in Los Angeles, working with Keef and other Glow Gang affiliates, rarely stepping foot back in Chicago. Now, his brief presence was framed as an official return, a reassertion of control and visibility in neighborhoods historically associated with the gang. The energy surrounding the clip was palpable. This wasn't just a cousin visiting. It was a member of a powerful network, openly staking his claim and issuing veiled threats toward rival groups. Observers immediately drew parallels to the events surrounding Blood Money, Chief Keef's late cousin, whose return to Chicago had ended tragically. The streets remembered, and the online community quickly picked up on every signal, every reference, and every subtle display of authority Tada exhibited. The tension was compounded by the nature of Chicago's drill culture itself. Jewelry, clothing, and social media presence are symbols of credibility and power. Tada's 4 watches and multiple chains weren't mere fashion choices. They were markers of his rank, influence, and readiness to engage if challenged. The clip was more than entertainment. It was a warning. As viewers dissected each frame, discussions erupted about the potential consequences of this display. Could history repeat itself? Was Chicago ready for another Glow Gang return? And, most critically, would this time be different? The streets and the world watching online held their breath for the answers.
My cousin, Bud, my brother, Cap, Couple, Marvin, OD, White.
The scale of loss within Glow Gang was staggering, and Chief Keef's world was built around a continuous confrontation with mortality. Each name lost, each fallen affiliate, was like a shell casing hitting the floor, rapid, relentless, and unrelenting. The rhythm of death in his life left no space for reflection, no room to pause and grieve properly. In the drill world, mourning was compressed, immediate, and often secondary to survival. For Keef, the chain of violence was both personal and systemic. Every casualty reflected not just individual tragedy, but a calculated response from the streets, a cycle he had no choice but to navigate with precision. The list of names alone was overwhelming. O.D. Perry, Keef's stepbrother, Blood Money, Capo, Wolf the Boss, Trey Savage, the roles of loss seemed endless, each accompanied by a unique story of violence, betrayal, or street retaliation. The cumulative effect was psychological, shaping how Keef approached life, music, and business. Every decision had to account for both immediate survival and the larger narrative. Protect yourself, protect your crew, and maintain control over the legacy being eroded by street violence. Tada's return in February 2026 was a direct engagement with this history. By standing on the blocks where these losses occurred, he was both confronting and honoring the past. His presence wasn't a casual flex, it was a calculated assertion of continuity, authority, and readiness. The streets and the drill community recognized that every word, gesture, and visual cue carried meaning rooted in years of bloodshed, alliances, and strategic survival. This understanding informed both online discourse and local reactions. Fans debated authenticity, rivals assessed threats, and observers saw the return as a high-stakes gamble grounded in historical precedent. Chief Keef's relationship with these losses added further context. Each death had forced strategic decisions, shaping the trajectory of his life and career. Moving to Los Angeles, disengaging from Chicago's immediate violence, and building Glow Gang remotely were all responses to the unbroken cycle of fatalities around him. The loss of Blood Money in particular was pivotal. It was a personal blow, demonstrating that even success and familial ties could not guarantee safety in Chicago. Every subsequent move, including Tada's return, was framed by this context of caution, awareness, and tactical calculation. Even as Keef observed from afar, the legacy of these deaths informed every action taken by affiliates. The re-entry of Glow Gang members into Chicago's streets wasn't a reckless act, it was informed by the hard-earned lessons of prior losses. Each movement was deliberate, designed to communicate power, readiness, and strategic intent. The videos Tada released were layered with symbolism. Chains, watches, verbal threats, and specific geographic markers all served to reinforce the narrative that Glow Gang had survived, adapted, and returned with purpose. The process of grieving in Chief Keef's world was as complicated as the violence that surrounded him. There was no luxury for extended mourning. The next funeral was always looming, a stark reminder of the relentless nature of street life. Before Keef ever released a track, before he became the global figure known for drill music, there was a reality defined by the loss of individuals like O.D. Perry. Born around 1991 and affiliated with the Black Disciples, Perry was ambushed and shot multiple times near Parkway Gardens in August 2011. His death transformed the block, which was subsequently renamed O Block in his honor, solidifying the historical and cultural significance of these streets. Keef, only 16 at the time, internalized these losses, channeling raw grief and anger into his music. Tracks like 3 Huna carried both the sonic energy of early drill and the emotional imprint of witnessing friends and family fall to violence. There were no arrests, no closure, and no easy explanations, just a pattern that young artists like Keef were forced to navigate while building careers under the constant threat of death. The environment was unforgiving, and every surviving member of the crew had to develop strategies to endure both personally and professionally. Subsequent tragedies reinforced this pattern. On January 2, 2013, Keef's stepbrother was killed at just 19 years old. Being on probation for weapons charges prevented Keef from attending in person, forcing him to watch via FaceTime as his family lowered his brother into the ground. Such experiences were formative, instilling both a sense of loss and a hardened perspective on survival. They reinforced the reality that Chicago's streets did not pause for grief, and that staying alive required constant vigilance. The losses continued with figures like Marvin Carr, known as Capo, who was shot in a drive-by on July 11, 2015. A 22-year-old member of Core Glow Gang, Capo's death occurred in South Shore and tragically resulted in the death of a 13-month-old infant, Dylan Harris. The violence was indiscriminate and brutally public. Even attempts to honor fallen affiliates such as hologram tribute concerts were blocked by authorities, demonstrating the intersection of real-world danger and systemic barriers to mourning or cultural acknowledgement. This pattern of loss extended beyond Chicago. Wolf the Boss, a key affiliate, was found dead in Compton, California, in March 2015 after a suspected robbery turned fatal. Even far from the city, the consequences of violence followed Keef's network, underlining the inescapable reach of street conflicts and rivalries. By June 19, 2020, Trey Savage, another founding Glow Gang member, was shot and killed in South Chicago, further highlighting the relentless nature of these cycles. The deaths of individuals like White Tone, OD, Lil Steve, and Fredo Santana, all from 2012 to 2018, demonstrate a broader trend of targeted or incidental violence impacting Keef's circle, reinforcing the survival paradox: to live, one must move, adapt, and escape when necessary.